Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very special Put Up Your Spooks. In this corner, an episode of 90s favorite, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And the challenger in the corner at least 6 feet or more away, Monsters! This week's theme,
Trapped!
Welcome to a very special Put Up Your Spooks where we are quite trapped by the sad current events.
This is taking place during the quarantine from our snowbound cabins and tunnels to yours.
We hope everyone out there is enjoying your time a little bit more now that you've got us in your ear tunnels.
It'll make more sense once we talk about the episodes.
Indeed. Those of you listening, if you can't tell, Jeff and I are separated by at least 6 feet and several miles for the first time ever on Put Up Your Spooks Skype edition.
I would say for the first time ever
in life,
Ryan and I are rarely this far apart.
Not in the
for
same
this long.
room. My episode this week, Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of Bigfoot Ridge. This is the first one we've done with the new Are You Afraid of the Dark sort of second class, if you will, where Tucker takes over and recruits a bunch of new kids who immediately shit the place up and bring in a bunch of couches and filthy furniture. It stars Anakin Skywalker and a girl who was in like Animorphs and stuff, I think. I don't know. She was like kind of big in Canadian television for a while, but I actually don't know her name.
Are you talking about, she was on 24, she was Jack Bauer's daughter?
No, Alicia Cuthbert. I'm talking about the actual, the story within the episode. But yeah, young Alicia Cuthbert, this was, I think, her first acting job, or one of. Yeah, Hayden Christensen plays the main character.
He was doing this thing, and I don't know if it was a choice or just something certain people do, where he was letting his mouth hang open after he would talk.
That's called...
And
that's called being Hayden Christensen. He did that a lot in the Star Wars prequels too. But yeah, there's one point in particular where he's like, you can't just go out there. And then he just like, he gave her the bedroom eyes, even though he was playing her brother. It was super creepy.
I guess we see what we want to see, Ryan.
Rewatch it. I'm telling you. He's giving Danny the bedroom eyes. And then the mom comes in and she's like, all right, you two. Enough with the sexual tension. Go see what's on the tube, if you know what I mean. So the episode begins, and brother and sister, Danny and Kirk, are fucking extreme snowboarding down the mountain. Hard, crazy, awesome library hard rock guitar is playing. And they're shredding down the bunny slopes. And they finish up, and Hayden Christensen's like, radical! I'm so stoked on that run. Now let's go home. Awesome. And Danny says, okay, yeah, but now we get to go off the backside. And he's like, nah, I'm done, I'm beat. And she's like, no, you promised. And he said, yeah, that's the only way I could get you to have some fun. And she says, we have to look for her. And he's like, we're never going to find her. Nobody could survive out there in the wilderness for 3 weeks or whatever with no food, no water, and no shelter. And she's like, I can't give up, whatever. So it turns out that their friend, Gina, went snowboarding off the backside a couple weeks in the past and disappeared. They couldn't find her. Danny blames herself because she didn't go after Gina when she snowboarded off the backside. But Kirk doesn't believe they could ever find her. So, he leaves. As soon as he's gone, Danny sees Gina, her friend, off in the distance, but then she disappears. Danny's at home a little bit later, and she's listening to some more rippin' 90s hard rock library guitar tunes.
I think I know that band. That band is called Rippenstein.
Oh yeah, I think they're pretty good. And then she hears it again. Danny,
help me.
She hears the voice, and Gina is in her mirror. And she's like, you gotta come find me, you gotta come find me. And Gina's like, what the hell? She turns around, but there's no Gina in the room. Then Kirk comes home, and he's pouring himself a glass of milk out of a bag, because in Canada, I don't know if you noticed, but they have bag milk instead of, like, milk jugs. So you get a very special...
I thought that was a cow's udder.
Basically, I mean, maybe that's why, because it's, like, reminiscent. But you get a very special pitcher that holds the bag, and you snip a corner of the bag off, and then it's just open. I guess you could maybe clip it, but we never did in college, because that's how extreme we were in my college. We did not clip our bag milk ends.
There's nothing more extreme than spoiled milk.
It makes your coffee extreme. Lee gross. Anyway, so Danny comes roaring down the stairs, and she's like, I gotta go out. I'm going out to find her. Gina, she's alive, I know it. And he looks at the map that she's looking at, and he says, Bigfoot Ridge? That's 30 miles away from where she disappeared. And she's like, yeah, but she's there. I know it. So she goes out, and he's like, no, there's a storm coming. You can't go out. But he doesn't really try to stop her that hard. And she leaves. And she takes her snowmobile out to Bigfoot Ridge. And then, sure enough, Gina's there. And Gina says, come find me. Come help me. And she snowboards away down the mountain. And then Danny gets off her snowmobile and follows on a snowboard. I thought it would have been a lot better if she had continued snowmobiling down. Maybe at some point the trees were too thick, but at that one spot, it was pretty wide open, and she could have gotten a lot farther on that snowmobile.
Yeah, but it would have been a lot less extreme.
It would have been a lot less extreme, that's true. So she finds a rundown, abandoned cabin out there in the wilderness on Bigfoot Ridge. She goes inside to investigate, and all of a sudden, a hand comes and grabs her on the shoulder, but it's Kirk. And she's like, I saw Gina. She came this way. I followed her down on my snowboard. It was extreme. And he's like, yeah, I fucking extremely followed you on my snowboard too. And there was only my tracks and your tracks.
Didn't he have a truck?
He has a truck, but he had to park it up on the ridge.
Oh, and then he snowboarded down?
He snowboarded down.
Still not as extreme.
No, yeah. Oh, it would have been way more extreme to take that truck down the ridge. Sideways.
Or if he'd be like helicoptered in.
Oh my god, and rappelled down on a rope with his snowboard attached to his feet.
Or done that snowboard move, the helicopter, where he was just 360ing off the ski slope.
I mean, he has the force, so he could have done all kinds of awesome things. So they go inside the cabin, and Gina comes out of the shadows, and she's like, help me. And then her eyes start glowing, and Danny and Kirk start getting really weak. They collapse on the floor, and then just then the storm hits, and a flash of lightning lights up the room. All of a sudden, they're old. They're two old people. And Gina, whose eyes are glowing, is scared of the lightning. She covers her eyes, and she vanishes. And then Kirk and Danny are back to normal. They're not old anymore, but they're like, whoa, I feel really weak. What the hell was that? And then they hear a voice from the next room. Danny, Kirk, it's me. Come help me. And they go into a very cozy, lovely living room where there's a nice fire going, and it's Gina, and she says, don't look at me. And they look at her, because you always do if someone says, don't look at me. And she's an old woman.
Rule 1.
And so she explains, it's the Umbra. It lured me here. She must have gone snowboarding just after Latin class, because I'm pretty sure Umbra means ghost in Latin.
It means shadow or shade, which is also another word for ghost.
Yeah, it's a good word for this creature because it sticks to the shadows and it fears the light. But still a very creative name on her part. I don't think they had a chat. I don't think she had a chat with the ghost where the ghost was like, I'm the Umbra and I'm sucking your life force.
She has been there for 3 weeks with shit all to do.
That's true, yeah. So somehow Gina has managed to survive in this cabin for 3 weeks with no food, no water, and a demon sucking her life force the whole time until she's an old woman. But they don't really explain that. Maybe the demon can slow down your metabolism somehow so that it can feed off you longer. Like, because it doesn't know when its next victim is going to come along, it has to sort of draw out your...
It's a good question. I was wondering that myself. There's snow outside, so she can melt water for... so she's not going to die of dehydration.
If she can get around. She can hardly pull herself off that couch, though.
True. I mean, she's not doing great, but you can go, 3 weeks without food. But if commercials from the 90s have taught me anything, it's that extreme and radical ski-boarders and, extreme snowboarders and skateboarders usually had, some Mountain Dew or some high C punch.
That's a good point.
Or some kind of peanut butter bar.
Very good point. She definitely had some radical sports drinks in her, many pockets and slots. And she's mobile enough to make a fire and keep the fire going and get, kindling and stuff. So you're right. She probably got some snow melt. But yeah, so she explains to them about the Umbra and how it sucks your energy and how it stays away from the light. So they're like, we got to keep this fire going. We're stuck here all night because there's a blizzard raging outside and we can't get back up the ridge until morning, until the blizzard blows over. So they kind of do what they can for a while, but the fire starts to burn low. And meanwhile, the Umbra is coming in and out, sucking their life force where it can, disappearing when they can stoke the fire. And they're like, we're out of stuff to burn. And then they look up and there's all these lights on the ceiling, so they figure out, okay, maybe we can get these lights to work. So Kurt goes to a back room and finds an old generator and thinks, maybe I can get this going, even though it's been here for a zillion years, and the gas is bad, and there's no fucking way in hell they could get this generator going. But he realizes there's a breaker box outside that he's going to have to go to get the thing fired up. Meanwhile, Danny and Gina are still in the cozy living room, trying desperately to get the last sparks of this fire to keep going. Their flashlight is dead. Kirk is outside in the blizzard, is blazing. He can barely walk. It's snowing so hard. He finds the breaker box, but it's locked. The fire goes out inside. The Umbra is coming for them. It's sucking out their souls. It steals their ski goggles, which maybe were like a nice barrier against its eyeball power. I don't know. Kirk finds his flashlight and is trying to smash open the breaker box. The Umbra is just about to sip its last delicious morsel from the girls inside. And just then, Kirk smashes the breaker box open, fires up the lights. The lights come on full force in the cabin, all the light bulbs still in perfect working order, and the Umbra evaporates into a shadow and bursts into particles. Gina is miraculously young again, and day breaks, and they all go home to safety. I feel like if you get your energy sucked so hard that you turn into an old woman, you probably shouldn't turn back into a kid once the demon is destroyed. I feel like that life force is gone.
We don't know what the metabolism of the Umbra is, like how quickly it poops out the power it steals. But by Highlander rules, if you kill the Umbra, you get all its power. She could have ended up even younger than when she went in.
Oh, that's a really good point, yeah.
I thought it would have been awesome if there had been like the quickening Highlander style where all the energy was going into her.
Well, they actually did do a CG death for the monster. Like, it turned into a CG shadow and exploded into CG sparks, and I'm pretty sure that was the entire budget.
Yeah, I was impressed. That was pretty cool for 90s TV.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. As much as I kind of made fun of it, I think it's a very good episode. It's like spooky. There's a good element of danger. They're trapped by the elements and by the ghost. But I did think they should start tearing apart the walls and burning them, or just burning the whole cabin, because it was all made of old dry wood.
On a previous episode, you had told me that there was some network edict that they could never show the kids starting a fire.
Uh-huh.
Or like show kids at home how fire is made. And I think that was in full effect. They were surrounded by old dry wood, couch cushions.
True, yeah.
Hats, mittens. Like, they went through this storage room to the generator, and it was just full of old shit. And I was like, yeah, you could burn a lot of stuff there. And they're like, well, there's no freshly split logs.
That's a very good point. I'm sure you're right. They didn't want kids like going home and burning their shit, or they thought that would happen. Which, let's face it would have happened. One time I saw this movie about these kids. I think it was 7 Ninja Kids or something. I don't really remember what it was called. But one of the kids, like, snapped a dude's neck.
Wait, you mean you don't own this movie?
Amazingly, no, I don't. It was a VHS that my dad rented for us when we were sick one day from the video store, and we played it and returned it, and then it disappeared into oblivion. But one of the ninja kids snapped a dude's neck, and I tried that move out on my sister. So yeah, kids are gonna do what they see.
I think that's why that movie isn't around. Your dad burned it.
Perhaps
when he realized you tried to
snap my sister's neck. Yeah, and she was like, "Ow!" Oh,
you
thank
couldn't
God.
even snap her neck.
Well, I didn't know the actual technique. Thank goodness. Because, much like Nickelodeon, they only kind of alluded to the technique.
Well, what did you hope was going to happen when you snapped your sister's neck?
I didn't know that was what the move was for. I thought it was like a put him to sleep move.
Oh.
And it
okay.
had a cool sound effect. It went like, zweep! It's a miracle my sister is still alive.
Yeah, that's unfortunate but true. So, a few more questions about that survival scenario. They were chasing the Umbra off with light, and they had a flashlight, and I was wondering, they had a mirror inside the cabin, and I wonder if someone could have tried to reflect the mirror from the fireplace and kind of sweep it around.
Oh yeah.
Because it was almost like a video game. Every time the Umbra would sneak up on them, they would like find it and blast it with the flashlight.
Yeah.
And the thing about light is that it moves at the speed of light. And so Danny was keeping the flashlight on the whole time. And it's like, you really only need that flashlight on for a millionth of a second. And you're going to send those photons downstream.
Yeah.
Like, that Umbra is never going to get next to you if it suffers at the speed of light. You know what I mean?
But it was scary. It was a scary ghost. So, they were in a desperate, scary situation. You got to keep that light on.
Definitely they were freaked out, and I understand. I really appreciated how the Umbra wasn't, like, running around and, like, making scary noises. It just had a creepy smile and was slowly walking towards them like a really good haunted house actor.
Yeah, it was creepy. And then, when the Umbra sucks your energy...
That was effective spook.
Yeah, when it sucks your energy, it can become you. And so it sucked enough of Danny's energy that it became her, and then she did the same creepy smile. It was awesome.
I know the Umbra was ancient, or for some reason, Gina somehow knew it was ancient.
She knew a lot about it.
And, well, I mean, they were roommates, essentially, for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
She must have learned something.
I wonder if she shed a single tear when it finally died.
She could be part Umbra now, for all we know. But even if the Umbra was ancient and didn't understand electricity and generators and light bulbs, it should have, destroyed the fireplace or something.
Yeah, because
it was really just giving away the store.
Yeah, and it can interact with physical objects because we saw it pick up the goggles. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that the Umbra was able to project its thoughts or its illusions out 30 miles. Because remember, they're 30 miles away from Bigfoot Ridge.
At least, possibly more.
Danny was seeing stuff in her.
Yeah. So
it's like, what is this Umbra?
Right. Because at first I was kind of like, I honestly feel a little bad for the Umbra because it's stuck in this cabin in the middle of nowhere with all these skeletons. But at the same time, you're right. It can go fucking anywhere it wants. So maybe that's just its preferred home.
Yeah. I mean, it was a cozy cabin, lots of firewood, lots of skeletons. I don't feel bad for the Umbra. It was.
I only felt bad for it when I thought
abducting children and killing them.
Only when it was stuck in the cabin, that boring cabin. That was the only time I felt bad for it.
I think you were just confusing your own emotions about being quarantined with the Umbra.
I mean, I know how it feels.
I was curious. Did you? I was thinking, like, what would I do in that situation? A, I would burn more stuff. B, I would use the mirror to bounce light from the roaring fire.
Didn't even think of that. Smart.
C, I would use the flashlight in short bursts. D, just take my chances with the blizzard. Because,
yeah,
you're trapped in a house with a energy vampire.
Especially if you know the direction of your vehicle, but they did have the old lady that they had to drag around, so...
Oh, right. No, that's a good point.
But they knew, that a 30-year-old generator would just kick right back to life.
June always makes me sad. You're thinking about the Umbra and the Umbra's feelings, and you're feeling so bad for this poor Umbra trapped in the cabin. I always feel bad for the actors and actresses, and it's usually actresses, who are hired for these kid shows, and they have to play someone who's old, and they're just an actress. They sent in a headshot. They made it through the casting process, and then they're dressed in some kid's clothing. And the kids are like, "Oh, gross! What happened to you?" And they're like, "I'm old. Don't look at me. I'm hideous."
Yeah.
Like that's someone's mom. That's someone's grandma. She's a working actress.
Very similar. I always felt so terrible for the kids that were hired to play the role of fat kid or ugly person, because that's a character that pops up. It probably will never again because of PC culture, and maybe that's a good side effect of PC culture. But yeah, there were so many roles for fat person or ugly person, and that must just have been. Although, they were like, okay, I got that role locked.
It's the plight of the character actor.
Yeah.
There's a niche and you can fill it. But just to be on set and have a bunch of symmetrical young child actors surrounding you, doing take after take, you're so hideous.
Especially in Canada, where they're not used to that kind of shit.
Yeah, exactly, where they respect the elders.
That's right. Well, yeah, I mean, the price you pay for immortality.
What would you have done in that cabin?
I would have burned the whole cabin, and then I would have been...
Yeah.
At the mercy of the blizzard.
I think a burning cabin would put out a lot of heat.
It probably would have seen us through the night.
Although there's no guarantee the blizzard is going to end before daylight. However, once the sun comes out, even if it's whiteout conditions, I feel like that diffraction of light would destroy the Umbra.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like the blazing cabin probably would have destroyed the Umbra, too. Although I don't know.
Yeah, although if I were the Umbra, I would have made some small holes in the foundation where I could, like, slip down into it.
Oh, yeah.
Into, like, a dark crevice to survive.
Or just travel to, like, the Arctic Circle or something for the time being, where it's night all the time.
Yeah. Do a 30 days of night situation.
Maybe she can only travel...
They come.
Yeah, exactly. So the Umbra appeared as Gina to Danny because they were friends and they had that sort of connection. And the Umbra appeared to Gina as a ski patrol guy because she really wanted to bone. So maybe it can only kind of get inside your head and travel to you where you are, like, in your brain.
Yeah, I suspect it wasn't actually there physically, but it was like a telepathic connection. When Gina first said that she thought it was someone from Ski Patrol, my brain went to the Ski Patrol movie right away. And I was like, oh, you thought it was like an actor from that 80s movie Ski Patrol?
So what are we waiting for? Let's shred this hill! Taste death, live life!
So for my Trapped episode of Put Up Your Spooks, I watched Monsters: The Hole. This story takes place during the Vietnam War, and it follows three characters: a calm, cool, and collected sergeant, played by Ahmad Rashad, a local Southern Vietnamese guide, and a uncommitted and rash Corporal Torres. They go into a hole in the ground to look for insurgents and spies and enemy Viet Cong. Torres, he's about to ship out stateside. He ain't got time for this.
Hey, look, Sarge, here's the thing. 2 weeks and I am out of this cruddy country and back in the Bronx. So let's not go looking for no trouble with Charlie. No commendations or nothing. Let's just in and out, okay?
Ahmad Rashad calls him a short timer. He thinks he's not willing to stick with the mission. And so he forces him to go down into the hole. And almost immediately they find a booby trap, which is a grenade stuck in the wall, kind of pinned in with some high-tension wire, some tripwires. So the captain clips the wire, and they keep going. It's tense. It's spooky.
He's like, I've done 1,000 of these. Don't worry about it. And then he just fucking cuts it. He's like, easy, snip. And that's how you diffuse the tripwire that he's done 1,000 of.
There's probably some art to it. I could imagine if you put tension on it while you're clipping it.
Could pull that pin, I guess.
It's a grenade, so you could maybe hold the pin in place while you clip the wire.
Yeah.
But what do I know? So they're making their way through this tunnel network, and as they go, Corporal Torres is sticking red shotgun shells into the tunnel walls, almost like breadcrumbs marking their progress. And they find their way into this big, well-made command bunker. And it's got maps, enemy documents, gear and supplies, but there's also a half-dead enemy soldier. And so their local guide goes over and talks to him in Vietnamese. And this wounded soldier, he's all messed up, and he's real upset. He's ranting about something terrible that's happened. He says that the dead have come back to life. So all the dead that are buried in the walls of this tunnel, they're coming back to life for vengeance, not against the Americans, but just against anyone who's been perpetrating this war. Not only that, but the tunnels themselves are shifting, trying to get people confused and lost and trapped underground. So they don't quite believe this, but it does set off a bit of tension between Torres and their Vietnamese guide, and Torres and the sergeant. So the sergeant wants to stick with the mission, and he's like, we got to get all these documents, and we got to keep searching, because there's no way they went that far and left behind their command post. They got to be around here somewhere. We're going to go find them. So they head down another tunnel, and hands start bursting through walls and grabbing at Torres. He tries to convince them that someone grabbed him. The sergeant doesn't believe him, but before you know it, huge piles of thriller-style Vietnamese zombies start bursting through the walls, and they start a firefight. They start shooting the guys, but it's not Romero rules where you can just destroy the brain and take out these zombies. Like, these are truly reanimated dead. They're just going to keep coming until they're destroyed, or until you take a left down the tunnel, because instead of being overwhelmed by an avalanche of the dead, they just kind of fire a couple shots and fall back, and then the dead kind of go somewhere else to recharge or rest. I don't know. And so every once in a while they'll shoot a couple zombies, but for the most part they're dealing with the fact that the tunnels themselves are turning and shifting around. Now, luckily Torres had the foresight to stick those bright red shotgun shells in, and he's like, man, we haven't been here, this doesn't make sense, we're lost. And the sergeant's like, no, you're just freaking out. Look, here's another shotgun shell. All right, we know exactly where we are. And then they turn a corner and they're like, wait, this can't be right. And they're like, crap, okay, we just got turned around, don't worry about it. So they work their way back to the command center, that central location, that sort of fortified bunker, and shoot a couple more. And the sergeant actually says, I'm not worried as long as this ammunition holds out, even though the bullets aren't doing anything against the zombies. But he keeps blasting them, and unfortunately their local guide gets dragged away and killed. So the sergeant starts digging a hole up through the roof of the bunker, because he knows that they're only a couple feet at that point from the surface. And so he's got his knife out and he's digging, and Torres is freaking out. He's getting torn up by zombies. They're fighting for their life. And then the zombies kind of decide to break, go have a smoke, because they know these guys aren't getting out of there. So the sergeant actually tunnels out of that chamber, and he climbs up, and then he reaches down, grabs Torres, and they find themselves in another side chamber. In fact, lower than one they'd met before.
Oh, wasn't it the same chamber that the lady was in, or the Vietnamese soldier? Not lady, it was a man. Because then that soldier is like a full-on zombie now.
The important part is that they tunnel up into this other level that they think is going to be particularly at daylight, and they realize that they're still underground and that nothing makes sense. The tunnels have been shifting to keep them trapped and lost, just like the dying soldier had told them. So before the sergeant and Corporal Torres can make their escape, the dead grab them, drag them down, and presumably kill them, and they will now join their number and be part of the swarms of undead that live in the walls to kill other soldiers.
Yeah.
Now, what I thought was kind of cool about this was that the ending of the episode was just a shot of the open hole to the surface. You know, it's just calling people to come down and explore. So not only do you have a horror story where everyone dies, but it's an ongoing situation. Like, this hole is waiting for more victims. So I thought that was pretty metal.
It's a voracious hole.
So, you know, this was an episode where it took some big swings. It had some good concepts. I just don't think the execution was very good.
No, it was pretty poor.
You've got a character triangle in the beginning. You've got Ahmad Rashad as the sergeant that wants to get the mission done, no matter how crazy and suicidal it is. You've got Corporal Torres that just doesn't want to be there at all, doesn't care about the mission, doesn't want to fight, has very little will to live, but he's quick to anger. And then you have their local guide, who's translating and kind of giving them the 411 on the local legends and the evil going on inside this cursed tunnel. And so you've got some conflict between Torres and the local guide, because he doesn't believe, this mumbo jumbo that the tunnels have come to life and that the dead are coming back to kill people. And you've got the sergeant that's trying to keep Corporal Torres to keep them together so that they can keep fighting and keep trying to escape. But it kind of peters out. There's not actually a lot of interesting dramatic conflict between these characters.
Yeah, nothing actually happens whatsoever besides they get attacked by zombies.
Yeah, if one of them had pulled a gun on the other, that would have been kind of interesting. That would have upped the interpersonal stakes.
Yeah.
Or if Torres had killed that soldier that was trying to warn them about the dead coming back to life, that would have upped the stakes with their local guide or something like that. Something that you might see in Platoon or something like that. But it's like they just sort of did a quick surface gloss on dynamics of conflict between these guys, and they never really paid off.
Right.
The dead were super scary and cool, but they didn't keep the pressure on. Like I said, they would kind of attack and back off for no reason.
No reason.
I guess the only reason they backed off is so that the tunnels could kind of confuse and exhaust its victims, right?
Yeah.
It would wear people down. And so the dead were in no hurry, of course. The dead never are. But it feels like the show didn't know whether it wanted us to be scared of zombies or scared of these living tunnels. And it kind of needed to pick a lane. So I was thinking about this, and, dramatic conflict typically falls into one of several categories. Some people say there's 3 types of conflict. Some people go all the way up to 7. But I think for the shows that you and I watch for Up Your Spooks, the 3 categories are usually person versus nature, or person versus the supernatural. And this one was kind of both person versus nature and person versus the supernatural. And when you were talking about the Tale of Bigfoot Ridge, that was also person versus nature and person versus supernatural.
Yeah.
But maybe because this one just had a horde of faceless zombies as opposed to a named individual monster like the Umbra, I feel like Are You Afraid of the Dark, it worked better. Whereas in this one, in Monsters, person versus nature was just kind of like the fact you're in a tunnel.
Right.
And the tunnel was supernatural, but it just, I don't know, it wasn't distinct enough. It felt like 2 different threats, and they didn't really deliver on either of them.
No. I also thought that something they could have done to easily ratchet up the tension in that episode was have them, like they did in Bigfoot Ridge, they were trapped in there by the blizzard, and inside there was a ghost. So they were like, damned if they do or damned if they don't. In the hole, the only problem they had was the tunnel and the zombies. I thought they should have been trapped in the hole by enemy soldiers. This was like a refuge that they had taken. So that if they'd gone out, they were in that shit, and if they stayed in, they were in that shit. I thought that could have really quickly and easily taken it to another level just of tension. But they didn't do that. They were just kind of casually checking out the hole.
That would have added a level. You're right. In Bigfoot Ridge, the blizzard was just outside keeping them trapped, whereas in the hole, they were in the nature that was supernatural, that was messing with them. The tunnels were shifting.
Right. But they could have gotten out if they could have just found the entrance.
Right. Although if the earth itself is pulling you down, it could probably just collapse and crush you at any
I wish
time.
that had happened too. I wish one of the tunnels had caved in.
Them.
Yeah.
If they had gone down with like a full squad, I think they could have explored a lot of different ways to die. Like I mentioned in the very top of the episode, there's booby traps all throughout this tunnel. Does that really pay off or come back? As they're running from the zombies, they could be like falling into pit traps, or guys could be getting blown up by grenades and tripwires and stuff like that.
Right. Or they could have lured some zombies into a tiger trap that they had been talking about.
Exactly. So I thought of 2 different ways to kind of spin this story that could have been a little stronger, and I'm going to pitch these to you. So let me pitch the first one to you.
All right.
So, number 1, the shifting tunnels story. It would be more psychological with claustrophobia, disorientation, and paranoia, causing the characters to fight with each other, possibly ending in a friendly firefight, murder, and finally a pit trap or a forgotten tripwire explosion. This would have required better cinematography, acting, writing, probably a lot more time and money. These tunnels were like the most well-lit, largest tunnels. Like, they didn't even have to like duck their heads, and it kind of shortchanged the horror of being underground. You know, they were in these like nice open air, spacious passages. My other version would be no shifting tunnels, the zombies only story. So that would start the same, except the zombies would never let up and disappear. The soldiers would have to fight their way through, expending all their ammunition, dying one by one, and they'd be forced to retreat once their ammunition was all gone to that enemy bunker, and then use a cache of explosives to destroy the zombies and collapse the tunnel network and bury any zombies they didn't kill.
Wow.
At the end, they'd claw their way out of the rubble and get back to the surface. At first, you'd see a few native villagers running away from them, and then they'd reach their base. And then all their fellow soldiers would start screaming, and they would realize that they had died underneath in the tunnels and had come out as zombies.
Or all their fellow soldiers were zombies. Anything other than what happened, which was essentially nothing.
I'm okay with the nothing ending because the trap is still waiting.
Right.
It's just the way they got there was kind of lame.
Yeah. And you know, you could have done your exploding tunnels story with a match and dumping some dirt in front of the lens. It didn't have to be, and some good sound effects, you know? It doesn't have to cost anything.
Yeah, you could have just pointed a light at the lens, blown it out, you know, just like exposed the film and just had a bright light and an explosion sound effect.
Yeah, they already had the
Yeah,
pop
you're right.
grenades.
It wasn't expensive.
When we were looking for an episode, I came up with Bigfoot Ridge because it was the only one I could think of where someone was like trapped in a certain place. And then you had a couple, and the whole, you were like, oh, soldiers trapped in the tunnels in Vietnam with zombies. And I was like, that one. I don't care what, even if it doesn't really fit the theme, that's the one. And I couldn't
It's an
have
awesome
been more
idea.
wrong.
It's an awesome setting. I guess it was a victim of its budget. But like I said, I had two ideas that could have made it a little stronger.
Yeah, like really quickly came up with. They must have really rushed it. I mean, it's like one draft, like into production, get it through the pipeline. Like they must have had a slot to fill in the Colgate hour or whatever.
I wonder if the original story was about the tunnel itself, like that slow burn, the psychological horror,
And then they just added
people getting
zombies.
lost, because that's legit. And
Yeah.
then some producer was like, "You got to put zombies in there."
Probably.
And they're like, "Well, then the zombies would just kill them.
Yeah.
Have the zombies leave every 2 minutes.
The zombies get tired.
They're dead. They don't have the mitochondria."
The dead are all around us.
So, scare factor. Are you afraid of the dark? What do you think?
I think good scare factor. I think the Umbra was creepy.
Yeah.
The situation was scary. You know, it was life or death.
Yeah. I would say the stakes were high, and the Umbra had a proper creepiness, which I appreciated.
Also, Hayden Christensen's bedroom eyes, terrifying.
All right, scare factor. You were scared stiff. Scare factor for the whole.
Low.
You know, if I had watched that in the 80s, I think I really would have been impressed by that zombie makeup.
The zombie makeup was cool, and actually the dying soldier was cool and eerie because that dying soldier was just hanging out down there all alone.
And he was messed up. I mean, that was
Yeah.
some gnarly makeup.
Yep. But it was too
All right.
boring to be truly scary.
That is fair. So I would say low to midland, less than Bigfoot Ridge.
Yeah.
Gross factor, Bigfoot Ridge.
Low gross factor.
Although, what could be grosser than someone over
Than-
50?
Than old people. Gross factor, the whole, much higher. Just wounds, I guess, are pretty gross.
People getting kind of ripped apart and, some gore, some
Yeah.
zombies.
Also, gross negligence of the chain of command.
Yeah, that's about as gross as it gets. What the factor? For Bigfoot Ridge, I'd say it was decent.
I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. I think What the Factor denotes a sort of out of the blueness, and this one was a pretty straightforward ghost story.
So you've got, Monster in the House, or Umbra in the Cabin in this case, but the way they got there, which is they're ski boarders.
Extreme snowboarding.
I gotta stop saying that.
Ski
There's
boarders.
snowboarders. There's snowboarders whose friend had gone missing, and then she was getting psychic projections from this ancient monster in a cabin. I don't know. I just didn't expect them to go from where they started to where they ended. I thought that was pretty weird.
Yeah.
Okay, What the Factor for holes?
I don't know.
I think it's weird that they had two concurrent threats, or like two supernatural evils on top of each other.
Maybe it was all
which
in
is
their
where a lot of
heads.
our What the Factors are built of.
That's true.
Oh, it could have been a Jacob's Ladder type scenario. I'm going to give it kind of like a scare factor, slightly less than medium.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, theme of trapped.
I think high for both. They were both pretty trapped.
They were definitely trapped, although it could be argued that no one escapes the hole.
Yep, and they did escape, and they got their energy back in the Bigfoot Ridge, so maybe slight 1% higher in the hole.
No, not 1%. I would say high.
2%?
High for the hole. No, 50%
Low
higher.
for the hole.
High. High for the hole.
But in hole terms, low means high.
All right, fair enough. Body count.
Well, we saw at least 2 skeletons in Bigfoot Ridge, and Gina said there are bodies all over the cabin.
Although you can fit a lot more bodies in the tunnels than you can in the cabin.
That's true, yeah. Much higher for the hole. Hypothetical bodies. Although all those zombies were technically bodies, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
they were bodies. They lost
And
2
all 3
cast
soldiers.
members. But yeah, what am I talking about? They lost all the soldiers and in the hole. Yeah, no, hole blows it out of the water.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, the hole is still out there to this day, snacking on fools.
Perhaps.
I'm definitely going to say the hole takes it. Okay, and then our newest criteria, totally 80s versus hella 90s.
Oh, man.
I'm going to say that for the whole, totally 80s, you had Vietnam, which was always a popular subject.
True.
For 80s shows. And Torres, who was just a very particular type of Latino character, that sort of had an 80s panache to him. When Torres had given up all hope and his bad accent got even worse, and he started talking like Adam Sandler in The Waterboy.
Never should have come in these damn holes. We don't belong here. We start up people. Now it's making us pay.
Well, I'm sorry, my friend, but you don't get more 90s than snowboarding, extreme sports, ski boarding, snowmobiling, rockin' 90s guitar riffs.
That was hella 90s. I'm looking at the math, and I'm afraid the Tale of Bigfoot Ridge has got it in the bag.
Eked out the win. All right, everyone out there in listener land. Just because we're in lockdown doesn't mean you can't have fun. There are plenty of back episodes of Put Up Your Spooks for you to listen to.
Rerun for your life!